Hi, my name is Andy Day. I'm the founder and CEO of Capital A, and welcome to our M&A Q&A, which we have every Friday live at 2 p.m. This week, we've got a really good treat for you. It's Perry M. Anderson, as he's known. Looks like an international man of mystery, but is actually a private equity CEO. His firm is called Quadra Global Capital Corp. And the business is nearly 20 years old, and Perry's extremely experienced in M&A and private equity and finance. So we're going to go through a few questions today, find out a little bit about what he does, and also open the floor up to everybody a bit later on so you can ask him questions that relates to what we're discussing, which is agencies specifically. Perry's also interested in agencies, digital agencies in particular, and I think we'll go into detail about that a bit later on as well, also discussing the virtual roll-up, which I think is the deal that he's looking to do as well. So Perry, hi, how are you doing?
I am doing well, sir. Nice to meet you and nice to meet everybody. So I'm not sure about international man of mystery. I'm not very mysterious, so it's
Well, your photographs look much more sort of secret agent than my Steve Jobs lookalike that maybe I may have. Good to have you here. So everybody here pretty much is an agency owner, and if not, they've sold one recently. We're all looking to do deals and build groups of agencies or bolt-on businesses onto the current businesses that we are running. We've spoke to a few different people now, and we've got a few booked in over the next few weeks around, sort of different expertise around M&A. But I think you're the only person that we have lined up in regards to private equity at the moment. So I think everybody would be super eager to speak to you. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got into private equity? I know you've got a unique story yourself with how you built your own kind of empire, private equity empire, which is really interesting and really sort of liberating for the independent-minded amongst us.
yeah, sure, happy to. So thanks for the intro. Yeah, so I guess first of all, I'm always on these calls and I'm the guy with the funny accent. I always feel like the outcast. So I'm
I forgot to mention, yeah, you're Canadian.
I'm Canadian by trade, and I'm from Vancouver. So I live kind of half my time in Vancouver, and the other half I've got a home here in central London, which is where I'm relaxing and enjoying COVID from these days. So yeah, I guess my background is a little bit perhaps a little bit unique. So I've actually never had a job before, and my life is conventionally I was kind of told to kind of go to school, and then all of a sudden when you finish school, miraculously life is just going to somehow take care of you. And so I kind of bucked that trend. I did go to school. I spent a lot of time there, and I wanted to go to school for commerce. Went to school in few different countries and came out with an MBA from Oxford. And I kind of thought, well, hey, now life is just going to take care of me. And it turns it did not. I wanted to learn how to make money, and all it did was it brought me out of school with a bunch of debt. And so I took some time to kind of go down the entrepreneurial route, and I started a small little contracting business that did kind of painting and drywalling when I was super young, and I thought, I'm just going to try this for summer. And so this kind of started to snowball, and ended up having a couple crews, and got that was kind of going. And it was the first time in my life that I ever sort of made a couple of dollars. And I thought, I'm going to try this for the rest of the year. And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to go back and join the herd of cattle and just go and get a job. And so fortunately I didn't have to go back. And so I ended up kind of parlaying the few dollars that I was making into acquiring my first business at 24. So I bought my first business at a fairly young age, and sort of cobbled together a few dollars, went to a bank and kind of did a transaction, which was the completely wrong way to do it. But you live and learn. And so I kind of parlayed that into buying a few more restaurants, and then juice bars. And I started buying real estate and a few other things. And I sort of had this little, going concern in my kind of sort of mid to late 20s. And I was kind of debating about, what's next. I always sort of wanted to get back into finance, but I wanted to do it with a bit of an entrepreneurial spin as opposed to just going to a job. So I ended up founding what is today called Quadra Capital. So we're a relatively small boutique private equity firm. And so I guess to date, I've completed over 30 investments into a pretty diverse range of sectors. So as I mentioned, kind of from restaurant, retail, to travel, to manufacturing, to bought a media company in London, security, a whole slew of things. We've taken 3 companies public, 2 via RTO and 1 via IPO, and we've raised quite a bit of money through the capital markets as well. So got a that kind of underpins what we've kind of are doing. And so small team at Quadra. So there's kind of 11 of us. Everybody comes from fairly blue chip backgrounds. Everybody's worked from sort of Goldman Sachs to Rothschild, Carlyle Group, PwC, et cetera. But we're all we don't see ourselves as kind of, sort of the stodgy banker types. We really see ourselves more as, entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs, because we've all been kind of business owners, and, we kind of are looking for creative ways to be able to do deals. So I think probably what I maybe have to share with you or talk about is a lot more entrepreneurial than it is kind of corporate-y, because I don't really feel that I have a corporate bent to me. I'm just a guy that's out trying to solve problems of how as an entrepreneur do you sort of maximize your exit at the end of the day. And so that's kind of I guess how Quadra started. And I guess I kind of do 3 things. So one is obviously we're working on our own transactions. I'm quite interested in the digital agency space. Actually, just before Christmas, I signed a share purchase agreement to buy a 20-man digital agency in the UK, and then about 3 weeks ago, we've actually merged another 40-man digital agency, and we're doing a little bit of a roll up in the digital space. So I'm quite keen to be on this chat that's relative to kind of digital agencies. So we're kind of actively out doing deals or working on transactions. The second thing that we do is if we also partner up with entrepreneurs. So organic growth is kind of slow and painful, as I'm assuming you guys as agency owners have probably found out, going from client to client, and it's a slow trajectory to growth. So what we do is we actually partner up, and we JV with entrepreneurs that want to build their business through sort of a series of accretive acquisitions, and that's a much faster way to grow a business. So basically, we would help them to, we'd do all the analysis, all the structuring. We'll go out and raise all the capital required for you to close on a transaction. And then, obviously we want to share in the upside of a deal with people. So we kind of do that as the second leg of the stool, and then kind of the third and smaller leg of the stool. And this is kind of how Andy and I have been getting to know each other is, I've sort of been lecturing on the topic of sort of SME M&A and how to kind of do deals typically without using any of your own capital, and how to go out and access the private capital markets, and to be able to kind of raise all the money you need to be able to transact. And so I run run workshops kind of on a smaller monthly basis, just for people that want to understand how to kind of grow their own business or go out and do deals without typically having to use any of your capital. So I've done that for the past couple of years, and that's been a lot of fun as well. So yeah, those are kind of the 3 legs to my stool.
Brilliant, thank you. Can you just go into a little bit more detail about what private equity is? Because I suppose all of us here are very much creative, from the creative industries, and not particularly sort of finance minded. So what's the difference between private equity and coming to a business like Quadra Capital with a deal versus maybe going to a bank and borrowing money?
Yeah, so like I said, I've never had a job, so I don't know that I'm properly able to comment on what is real private equity. I mean, we really we just see ourselves as deal makers, and so I think that if from our vantage point, I mean, things only work when it's win-win scenarios, and we try to create win-win scenarios. We're not predatory or looking to take advantage of anything like that. And I think if you as a business owner were to go to a bank, a conventional high street bank, let's say you wanted to buy your competitor across the street or somebody in your supply chain, the banker would say, okay, interesting. How much cash are you going to put up? Circa 30% of your own capital. Give us your home as collateral. Give us a pint of blood, and give us a bunch of personal guarantees, and then we'll think about lending you some money for that. And so that's we kind of view conventional banking as that to us is predatory, and that's non-entrepreneurial. Banks aren't in the space of lending. Banks are in the space of, if they take 3 times the security from you, they'll give you back maybe, £1 worth of for every 3 of security that you give them. So, so we don't use banks, and we kind of, we show people how not to use banks. And there's a huge secondary market of alternative finance out there that don't take the same view that a bank would. They're not interested for, in you putting up your house and pledging all of your personal assets to be able to do deals. And I've kind of learned this just from error. So it's been total trial and error. I've had, kind of a couple successes, but I've also had a lot of failure in my career. And so a lot of the stuff that I've learned over the past couple of decades has just been from really out of necessity and just trying to figure out a smarter way to do it. So what is real private equity? We're really just out looking to do deals, whether that means we're fully acquiring a business, whether it means we're taking a minority stake in a business, whether we're doing a roll up, whether we're doing mergers. I'm of the viewpoint, and I guess I've learned this from, my own career and experience to date, that there's no sort of dignity in running a business. That's really hard, and it's painful. The dignity comes when you've sold your business and you're telling your buddies at a bar that you just sold it for a whole ton of money. And so it's life to me, I guess, is and maybe this is more philosophical, but it's go through life, and instead of building something over 30 years, and hopefully you're going to have some massive exit at the end, which is never promised or guaranteed. I think if you go through life having a series of capital events, that makes your life a lot easier to live. You're not eating beans out of a can for 30 years, hoping that something's going to happen. And so we kind of work with people to kind of, find win-win scenarios and to collaborate to get exits to happen. So that exits are what we do, as opposed to private equity.
Brilliant, Perry. That's a really great answer. And I think because of your approach, as well as you've kind of ended up being as much an M&A expert as anything else as well. So I'd like to ask you a few questions about how you do M&A and what your approach to it is. So one thing I say is that M&A is kind of a numbers game, isn't it? So you've got to get a lot of deals in front of you in order to at least even get one, because so many deals do end up falling over it right at the last hurdle. So it's important to get that sort of numbers thing going. How do you sort of work with deal flow and being introduced to deals? How do you get yourself out there and get a reputation so that you're able to bring in enough deals to be able to close something?
Yeah, good question. I don't think there's a hard answer for that. I mean, I've kind of been at this for a long time, and so deal flow is obviously the lifeblood of of doing deals, because there's a lot of attrition. There's a lot of it's funny, people always think, where do I get the money? But the money actually is relatively mechanical. If you've got a good deal, you're holding the pot of gold. It's relatively easy to get a good deal financed. The challenge that I think we have is that you put out an offer that's sensible and fair, and a lot of times the seller says, yeah, make me an offer, and you make them an offer, you give them a decent offer, and they just say, oh, thanks, and it's not really the right time to be able to sell right now, and they just walk away. And that's what actually collapses probably most of the deals that we work on. So consequently, we have to have a pretty big pipeline of deal flow. I've been at this a long time, so we've got introducers and biz dev guys that are kind of helping us out to kind of source things and bring it. So I don't think that's really relevant. But I think for people starting out, I got a lot of different suggestions, but I think one of them that I would maybe look to is if you have a business, I would look to your debtors and your creditors. So, who are the fast paying people? Who always pays on time your invoices when you invoice one out? You send it out, they immediately send you back payment. Who does that? Well, that's somebody that I would approach if you're looking to sell your business. That's somebody obviously you're in partnership with. That's somebody who's obviously knows your business. They're paying you fast, meaning that they're a solvent company. If you're looking to sell, it's probably advantageous for them to buy up the supply chain. And if they're paying you fast, that becomes an interesting place to look if you're looking to sell. Now, conversely, if you're looking to actually buy, one place you could look is the inverse. So, who is a slow payer? Who's always struggling to pay, and who's always, coming back, hey, in 2 weeks, that to me is somebody who's motivated. That's probably somebody has a little bit of perhaps stress. And so if you go to them and it's not about we will just buy you out. It's more about how can we figure out a way to get to a win-win, and how can we, sort of do something that works for both parties, i.e., relieves them of the pressure maybe that they're having, and obviously, from your viewpoint, you can go out and acquire some or all of their business. And there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but that would be two way. That one thing that I would look as one simple strategy is look to your payers, who's paying slow and fast, and those are people that you could go do deals with.
Yeah, brilliant. I say something similar myself, actually. I think I mentioned it last week, about the bad payers is actually quite often within your own network. You can find people complaining about bad payers, and that means these guys are probably more likely to sell. You talked a little bit about alternative finance, and like I said at the top, we are not finance people here. So the more you can tell us about these sorts of alternative finance sources, I think the more interesting it is. That's kind of the part at the end of the rainbow that everybody wants to know about. And I don't think there is really a simple sort of one answer approach to the answer, is there? But I'd be interested to get your take where a private equity company would be looking to hook up finance for deals that you're putting together. Obviously, we've established it wouldn't be a bank. So where would these guys network to try and find those types of deals?
To find the deals or to find the funding?
Sorry, not well, to put the deal together with the funding, yeah, to get the funding.
Yeah, so we're living in a very interesting time right now. So in fact, kind of the stars have sort of aligned for people that are out looking to do deals right now, and there's probably never been sort of a perfect storm like there is right now. So on one hand, all of the baby boomers are retiring at the same time right now. So you've got the biggest transfer of wealth going on in the history of the world. So all these businesses are just, the family businesses are coming to market in rapid succession. If they go to a business brokers only sell like 1 in every 12 of their listings. So that's not a good alternative, but the world is awash with these businesses coming to market. So that's one side of the ledger. The other side of the ledger is the capital. So there is record amounts of capital that has been sitting on the sidelines waiting to be deployed. And so, if you're kind of on one, from our collective viewpoint, we could look at something and we could say, well, where can we, where we possibly get the money for this? I mean, we watch BBC and CNN and we hear the sky is falling and times are terrible, and you'd think, there is no money, but actually it's the inverse. So the other world that we sort of live in is, we work with a lot of groups that there's too much capital and they don't have enough homes for it. They just can't find the deal flow, and that's their biggest problem. And so there's a huge non-bank secondary market of this. It's sort of the alternative finance market. These companies will lend and fund sort of upwards of 100% of a transaction, and there's a lot of ways that they would attach the funding onto something. So unlike a bank who's looking at you personally, like if you go to a high street bank, it's all about who are you, Andy, and show us how much money you have in your account and what's your credit worthiness and all that. But alternative funders don't look at you per se. They're looking at the target asset. Who's the target that you're trying to buy? That's what they're looking at. It's less about you and it's more about, what are you trying to buy? And if the diligence stacks up and the company's, assuming all things considered equal, it's profitable and it's been, has a long operating history and it makes some sense, they would hook the financing onto the target company. So it's really the target company that's important. And that's what they're funding against. And so it's a very different methodology, and it's a very different way of looking at things. But this is the rates are slightly more expensive than a conventional bank, but it's money that's easy to acquire, and where you don't have to put down any of your own capital typically, and you're not typically having to put up you're not having to put up your pledge your house or give away your kids as collateral. So it's a much more efficient and kind of much more forgiving way of raising finance as opposed to going to a bank.
So that kind of really influences what type of deals we should be going out looking for then, I guess, because obviously if you're looking at distressed companies at the moment and these guys are looking for maybe more solid businesses that they can offer finance to in whatever shape. How does that work? And what kind of deal are they looking to get into, and how would it be structured? Just, I mean, obviously there's all sorts of levels of detail you can go into, but just very briefly, what would a sort of a very general deal look like with alternative finance and somebody making an offer to an agency, for instance, that they were looking to acquire?
Yeah, deals are snowflakes, and everyone is sort of slightly different. There's not sort of a hard template for everything. So obviously, if a company is distressed, that's one way of going and doing deals. You're not going to put more debt onto a company that can't pay their debt. So if you go down that path, it's about figuring out a structure that's going to work for both parties, and kind of show people how to do that if they're so inclined. But the other one is obviously if you're going after profitable businesses. So somebody that's in your supply chain, or if it's a direct competitor of yours, there's numerous things that the company would have on their balance sheet. Do they have, and the more robust the target that you're looking at, the more robust their balance sheet, the easier it is to finance. So if they've got, you know, assets, and they've got, equipment and inventory, and, trucks and vehicles and machinery and what have you, that becomes very easy to finance. Also, if they have, maybe they're light on assets, talk about a digital agency. So not a lot of trucks and heavy equipment inside an agency, but what a lot of them typically do have is they have a really strong debtor book and really strong receivables. So there's a lot of ways to hook financing onto the target co's debtor book. So if they've got, let's say they've got all their contracts are on 1 year rolling contracts with, relatively, I don't know, larger businesses, that becomes relatively easy to raise finance against. So you can raise the money from that to be able to use to form the financing for your acquisition. And so it really just depends on what's on the balance sheet, but it does, whatever is on the balance sheet is typically leveraged. It's able to be leveraged. And I guess the couple of touch points, I would look for companies that are have low debt levels. That's important because you would be layering financing onto the company that you're buying. So the company obviously has to pay the debt. So you want to look for a company that doesn't have a lot of debt. And you also want to look for companies that have, fairly long operating histories. So they've got to have a minimum of sort of 2 years operating history. And, the longer the better, but the more of a track record they have, and the more certainty around kind of profitability, I think the more interesting that is to to an end financier.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, I think that's the sort of information that people are really looking to sort of dig into. So I'd like to also know, Perry, because I've seen this somewhere actually. I think it's one of the reasons why we first got in touch, because you were looking at this virtual roll-up concept. And I think most people here, I mean, one or two of us want to buy like one agency, maybe bolt it on, but I think the majority are looking to kind of build further than that. And so this concept of a roll-up is certainly something that we're going to go into more detail with into over the weeks. But you have this kind of sort of added layer of interesting sort of approach to how you structure these potential roll-ups by using this sort of virtual roll-up idea. And also, we've got somebody actually that just joined at the last minute who is an owner of a digital business, so he may well be even more interested. So if you just tell us a little bit more again about the what you're looking for in your digital businesses that you're looking to do this roll up, and also just go into a little bit more detail what this virtual roll up concept is and why it differs from a normal roll up.
Sure. So yeah, the thinking about behind this roll up is quite unconventional, like kind of everything that we we do. So I think it falls under the premise that it, it's all about maximizing an exit. So if you own a digital agency, you want to obviously get the best exit that you can at some point in time. And so how do you do that? So the way that we sort of view the world is that as a small business owner, going to market to try to sell your business, you're going to bump up against a couple of challenges. So number one, you're going to have a very limited buyer pool. There's very few people that will be able to acquire you just because you're small. You'll never sell to big private equity because big private equity can't make the economics work. You're just too small of a company. And so that poses a problem, very few buyers. And that is the state of the world right now.
Can you give us a little bit more detail on what you would consider small? Because obviously when you get into millions, your mum is happy. Your mum is really proud of you for getting up to a few million, but in the world of business, even a 10 million pound business is still quite small. So what would you say is a small business that's
Yeah,
too small for private equity or the other sorts of finance?
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's important. So thanks for flagging that. Yeah, so I would, I don't think there's a hard line in this, but I'd say I kind of, unless you're sort of getting somewhere near sort of 20 million in kind of turnover, you're never going to attract sort of a larger trade buyer or PE firm that's going to, you won't command a big multiple. So, and most companies never get to that point. They're doing 1, 2, 3, 5, million kind of turnover, which obviously is a nice business, but it's not going to be sold for a huge multiple to a big buyer. So, that's problem number one that you're going to have is you're going to have a very limited buyer pool. Number two, you're going to be constrained by the multiple that you're going to get for your business. So you can have a banner year next year and a banner year, hitting it out of the park the year after, but you're still going to have a relatively small multiple for your business, somewhere plus or minus kind of 3 to 4 times EBITDA is kind of what these small businesses are sort of trading for. And so, our thesis about doing a roll up is how do we maximize that, and how do we make this a lot easier for somebody looking to sell their business? So we're doing a bit of a different slant on a merger, and it's a decentralized merger. And so most conventional mergers, most integrated mergers, most of them fail. So they fail for a couple of reasons. They fail for because of two things: ego and integration. Ego is you got two CEOs trying to run it. We're doing it this way. No, we're doing it this way, and they can never figure that out. The second thing is the integration. People spend so much time on trying to smash two cultures together, and it's very, very hard. And so that rarely works out. And so consequently, most mergers actually fail. And so I was really intrigued by this, and I was there wasn't much I was actually intrigued at by school except having a few cocktails and having a good time. But the one thing I was actually why mergers failed. And so I wrote a paper on this when I went to Oxford, and it was about that. And so it kind of got me thinking, like, well, mergers are really interesting because in a merger, like 1 point plus 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals like 4 or 5. But how come most of them fail? Because these are good economics. And so the thinking that's kind of come from this is and knowing that they all fail because of integration and ego. And so the elegantly simple solution is just don't do that stuff. And so what we're doing, and our approach to this, is a virtual merger. It's a non-integrated merger. So what we're looking to do is we are looking to lock arms with other digital agencies that are not looking to sell today, but they want to maximize their end result, in kind of 18 to 24 months down the road. So we're looking for complementary digital agencies globally that fall within the auspice of kind of sort of three things. So we're looking for companies that either do content production, we're looking for companies that do data, or companies that do sort of programmatic marketing. They're able to kind of push the message out. If you've got those three legs of a stool, that becomes a very compelling ecosystem for somebody to eventually buy. And so we're looking for companies that fall within either of those three brackets. And so what we're doing is we are locking arms with each of the companies. So we are not taking equity stakes in your business. We are not telling somebody what to do. This is not a dictatorial regime. Everybody is a standalone, independent business. For all intents and purposes, nothing changes on day 2. If you're part of the collective, you just continue to operate. And so Quadra Capital becomes the plug and play advisory board to the group. So while you're inside the group, it's an open book, and there's a lot of cross sharing and cross synergies. If you got a company in New York that's with a company in London, for example, you can share clients, and there's organic growth that can just happen there naturally. And so So we become the plug and play advisory board. We've got about 150 years of collective experience, kind of offering up just kind of, legal advice and tax advice and various things just to kind of, help you. How can we help you is kind of our tagline, I guess. And so we want to get you into the right shape to be sold. And so, what we do is we kind of fatten the pig, if you will, over the next sort of year, and we just keep merging more companies that are complementary into this group. And then what we're going to do is we're going to position it for exit. And so what we've created then, and let's say we get 5, 10, 15 companies, and we go past that sort of glass ceiling of sort of 20 million. Once we do that, this becomes very compelling now to an end trade buyer or a larger private equity group to buy. And so the value of the portfolio then is not worth 3 times cash flow, it's worth arbitrarily 6 times cash flow. So if we sell the whole thing as a lot, everybody nets a much bigger multiple. So instead of going at this by yourself to try to sell for 3 times capital in a marketplace where there's very few buyers, you can come and join the group and we can sell it as a collective down the road. And so no matter how big or small you are, you're not advantaged or disadvantaged by anyone else in the group. Whatever your EBITDA contribution is to the collective, when it gets sold, everybody just gets paid out in accordance to your EBITDA. So if you're a big company or a small company, it doesn't matter. All we're bringing is we are moving the multiple for you. So instead of you selling for 3x, coming and joining us as a collective, you should be able to sell for sort of 6x. So you'll walk away maximizing your exit. And so we are creating scale through this roll up, but we're doing it in a different way, that we're not, we're not taking ownership in your business, and we're not looking to this to be a dictatorial regime, and we're not looking to do all the things that cause normal mergers to collapse, which is egos and integration. Where this is non-integrated, and so we're aligned with everybody. The one thing I will say, if you go out to sell your business, and I don't know, maybe some of you have, maybe some of you haven't. If you have, you'll know it's a very, very distracting process. There's kind of 2 parts to a business. There's running your business and there's trying to sell it. And a lot of entrepreneurs, when they go for the sale of selling their business, they take their eye off the ball of the actual business. And then if a sale doesn't go through, it's like their business hasn't done well because they've been so focused just on the sale, and they take their eye off the going concern. And so where we become helpful is, we're bearing the brunt of that. We've got quite a bit of experience at doing deals, and we've got on the front end, we can sort of manage that. And obviously we're aligned with everybody because we're taking a piece of the upside. We're taking 20% of the sale of the group. And so it's in our best interest to try to cut the best deal that we can, for the collective. And then, we can bear the brunt of a lot of the things so you don't have to take your eye off the business while this thing is sort of growing. So that's what we're doing. And we've already got, a group involved, and we've got a pretty big pipeline of companies, and it's going to be a fun story. Instead of sort of struggling to grow, kind of 100,000 here, 100,000 there, we're going to grow kind of, million by million, and we're going to do it all without having to use any equity or any dilutive capital, and nobody's taking ownership of your business, and you're not getting diluted through the process. All you're doing is we are going to move the multiple from you selling for 3x. We're going to try to sell the thing for double that. So that's kind of what we're doing for the roll up, and that's kind of the way that we see it, which is I think is relatively novel to maybe other things you've heard about in the marketplace.
Yeah, brilliant. So thank you for the detail on that. And I think everybody starts to hear about dilution quite a lot nowadays. And trying to create an environment where you're not getting diluted by somebody putting a load of money in or something. So obviously there's a few other types of businesses here as well. So what's the biggest sort of barrier to somebody being able to do that kind of roll up themselves? Or perhaps you could also tell us what other industries that you're doing roll-ups in as well, just in case that somebody might fit the bill if they're non-digital.
Got it. Yeah. So the only other one that we're doing it is in IT services. So IT services and digital marketing. We've only got 2 roll-ups going, and that's it. We really like both of those sectors because they're both very fragmented industries, and they're also highly acquisitive industries. And so, yeah, we're doing the roll-ups in both IT services globally and digital agencies. And
So if
I really
somebody's
like the
interested
digital
in
agent.
doing that, sorry, if somebody's interested in doing that themselves or something very similar, what are the barriers really for a business owner being able to do a roll-up or a virtual roll-up? Obviously, you talked about egos being one of the things, but would there be anything else?
If somebody tried to go and do this themselves,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's a big piece of work.
It's harder than it looks. You make it look easy, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back to deal flow. So you got to have a pretty good pipeline of stuff, and we're only looking for companies that are debt free, profitable, that obviously are synergistic with the other members. So yeah, it's really comes down to can you develop a big pipeline of deal flow, and I would say it's probably easier to come and join this as opposed to trying to go out and do build out your own pipeline, because that's, again, you would take your eye off the ball of running your business to kind of implement this. Can it be done? Absolutely. It just it's a big piece of work to do this, and I think as a firm we're kind of geared up to do the heavy lifting. And if somebody wanted to join us, they would be able to just reap the rewards of a bigger multiple at exit.
Yeah, brilliant answer. I'm just thinking about the simple maths involved in that. So if you wanted to close a deal with 10 companies in it right at the end, you'd be speaking to 100 businesses, constantly trying to sort of mollycoddle them in, herding cats, as they say. Okay, brilliant. So could you just give us maybe one of your great stories? There's a really good one about the hairdressers that you bought for £1, or something along those lines. Maybe one I've not heard. Just as a closure, and then we'll open it up to the floor, and we'll let everybody else ask you some questions.
A good story, like a business story, or
One of your M&A stories.
M&A stories?
Not you out as an international man of mystery, but just
yeah. So I did the best deal in my life, followed immediately by the worst deal I've ever done in my life. And I'll tell you how I made a couple dollars and lost a couple dollars. And so best deal I ever did in my life was a company out of Vancouver. They're called Vigilon, and they manufacture high definition security surveillance cameras. So our firm, we invested about $1 million into the business back in 2008, and we ended up helping to take them public in 2011 on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and then we got bought out by Motorola a couple years ago for $1.2 billion. So that was a lot of fun to be a part of that. I was in that for a long time, and it was a good win for a lot of people. But so I thought this is when the ego comes in, and you got to always put your ego in check. And so I thought, I said, I've been in this for a long time. I know a lot about security, so I'm going to go out and I'm going to do another security company. And so I did something out of my lane that was something that I promised myself I will never ever do again, and that was go do a startup. So I ended up going to Oxford University, and I acquired an IP portfolio of authentication security protocols, and we had all-star team, and raised money from the Ministry of Defense and the U.S. Navy, and And so I thought we'd have half a chance of kind of making something out of this, and everything went completely wrong. And long story short is I ended up losing a whole bunch of money, real money. It wasn't shares. Like I lost sort of a 7-figure check, and so it was fun to make it, but yeah, some of it went right out the back door on the next deal I did. But I think the silver lining. And my psychologist always says you got to find a silver lining. And I'm kidding. Yeah, the silver lining is, I would never do a startup again, and so it's just way too hard, and it's way too risky. And it was the one thing I probably never worked so hard in my life, and I lost the most amount of money I've ever lost in my life. So it was.
What was the time frame for that, Perry, from exiting and being on top of the world to crashing your
eating beans out of a can again? Yeah, probably 2 years, 24 months.
Yes, brilliant. Okay.
Yeah.
And then just I see everybody was nodding and smiling through that, so I'm sure we can all relate to it in one way or another. Maybe not that big. Yeah. Okay, brilliant. All right, let's ask our guests, our members here, to switch on their mics if they're interested, or raise their hand. I can't see everybody's camera, but I'll try and have a look. Has anybody got a question they would like to ask? Just pounced on everybody with no warning. Come on, Will. You've always got something, Brian.
I have, yeah. Hi, Perry. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Will.
So I was interested the idea that most mergers fail, particularly, and yet the virtual roll-up essentially still maintains that problem that you've got businesses that you brought together. Now, obviously, I understand the multiples point. You can make them more attractive for a trade sale, or maybe you can do other things with them, but that you haven't resolved that issue of merging. The mergers failed, that you've still got the potential for ego integration. But I'm just wondering, have you got, is there something special about this virtual roll-up that does something to address that problem you'd otherwise identified?
We are eliminating the problem of egos and integration because we're not integrating the businesses. So each company is remaining a standalone independent company. You're just part of a collective. You can actually play the card that you want to choose. So I know if you're a small business owner, sometimes it's hard to go and get the really big contracts because the big companies don't want to have a small service provider. So you can play the card of, hey, we're just a small, nimble, digital agency. You can also play the card of, hey, we're a global collective that's got, offices in X amount of countries. And so it becomes it becomes a lot easier to go and procure kind of larger contracts. But to your point, so you still are autonomous. You still are an independent business. You just happen to be operating underneath an umbrella that's planning to exit. So nobody's telling you what to do. You just continue to run your business as you see fit. If you don't do as well, you don't do as well. If you do really well in the next kind of 24 months, that only gets amplified by a much bigger multiple that we're going to bring. So it does remove the integration issue because we're not integrating, and it does remove the ego issue because we're not formally merging. You don't have two CEOs that are trying to figure out how the company is going to be run. You still are running your business.
And so have you got some kind of board running the umbrella function, which is independent? I mean, that's very specific, I know.
No, that's okay. Yeah, so we've got, I wouldn't call it a formal board because that sounds very corporate-y, and we're there's no, we have a no tie policy at our at Quadra. And so yeah, so we are, Quadra becomes sort of, like I said, the plug and play advisory board to the group. So we're the advisory board slash sort of deal maker. So we have a monthly Zoom call with people that are in the group. Everybody meets each other, everybody collaborates. As an advisory board, we say, look, how can we help everybody? Do you have a tax question, you got a legal question, capital markets question? It's all transparent. We just are kind of here to help each other as a kind of a democratic collective. And then, as we grow, and when it comes time to go out and start to go to market with this, that's kind of what we do best. We've got pretty good inroads to groups that want to buy big packages of stuff. So we would go and try to craft that deal. We'll then bring the deal back to the group and say, hey, here's what we've got. If it's not a good multiple, if it's less than kind of 5x, we would just say, hey, we have an offer of 4. Do you want to take it? If no, okay, that's fine. We'll keep going. And if we get an offer of 6x, then anything over 5x, we then kind of have the ability just to kind of push the deal over the line. Because what you don't want is, you don't want to, 9 groups say, or 10 groups, 9 groups say, yeah, let's go for it. And there's one stick in the mud that's holding everybody else back. So as long as we get a strong offer, which is way more than you'd be able to do on your own as an independent business, as long as we get an offer that's north of 5x, then we just have a mechanic just to kind of push the sale through. And so that's, but yeah, it's not a dictatorial board. It's an advisory board slash PE group that's going to help, maximize your end multiple. And that's all that matters.
And the buyer that you see, I mean, obviously you can make the merger happen and everyone gets there 6 times or what have you, but that person, at some point, someone does have to integrate those businesses, don't they? If an agency group buys it, what are they going to do with, 5 businesses with a 5 million revenue? But you've given it the problem to someone else essentially by then. Is that right?
I wouldn't even see that as the problem. I think that's some of the sizzle that we're selling to them, is because what most companies do is, when they merge, they focus so much on trying to smash everything together into one ball. So because these are all independently siloed business, when we actually sell that on, this is why some companies would be foaming at the mouth, because On day 2, as soon as they bought this collective, they could shut down 9 out of the 10 offices, and they could, do whatever they need to do to optimize the thing. So on day 2, they're going to be able to squeeze a lot of the orange out of it by optimizing it. And that's what big private equity does best. They love to get their big teams involved to kind of do optimization and all that stuff. We're selling that, which we see as the problem, and they see as the sizzle. And so we're selling that onto them. And this is actually one of the compelling reasons why they'd want to buy it, because we haven't done any of the optimization or integration. Leave that for somebody else.
Good. Yeah. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Will. Knew I could rely on you. Anything? Anybody else with some questions? Thomas, you good?
Yeah, I'm good. That's just brilliant things that I'm hearing. So I'm just my mind going in loop. I'm trying to get my own ideas around this wrap thing.
Okay,
processing it all. Okay, brilliant. All right.
Okay.
If there's no more questions,
I have one more, if I might. So just going back before you were talking about the virtual roll-up, I just wanted, because essentially what you've done there is you've come up with your virtual roll-up idea is a great idea. If I had to pitch that to someone, I would have thought that's probably going to cost me about £1 million to put that in place. It's a lot of contracts, a lot of modeling has got to happen. I'm just guessing that there's some sort of overhead there in doing what you're doing, and it's a lot of skill to do it. What opportunity do you see if you needed to get that kind of finance for that sort of project? Is that in itself a project which you think you could attract investment from private equity or other places? So it's a sort of almost like a kind of seed finance for a bigger deal.
Sorry, I guess I'm not clear what you mean by attracting finance.
So you're in a position to self-fund, I'm assuming, the actual overhead that you're taking in putting together your virtual agency roll-up. I'm assuming that has a large overhead attached to it, just in your intellectual, but your time, your legal fees, and all the rest of it. You've got to keep 10 agencies spinning for 18 months, and just a lot of work, as you say, to do that.
Right.
Now, but if you were to try and put a cost against that and raise for that cost.
Yeah, so we charge each company that wants to join. We charge a whopping fee of £1,000 per month, and so to be a part of the network, and that's just for the admin costs, because that's going to include all the legals. That's going to include, we got to go out and consolidate all the books, and we've got, there's just a little bit of a running cost. We got to keep the company open, and we're charging each company £1,000 per month to be part of the group, and then the back end is where we're taking the bulk of what we're doing. We're not making money, obviously, by charging the companies. We're making money on the back end, and we're aligned with you to cut the best deal that we can, because the better deal we can cut, the better we're going to get paid, and the better, the more money you're going to make as well. So
I understand that. If you had to front load that rather than back end it, would you be able to raise separate funds? If you weren't a private equity person yourself, if you're me, would you be able to get finance for that project?
For overhead?
Yeah.
Maybe it would all come down to structuring. Possibly it would. There's, this is it's a hard question to ask, because there's a lot of variables to give you a concrete answer. It would really depend on what you're thinking about in terms of a structure, and what you're going to go and pitch to all of the companies that you're looking to roll up, because you could raise some, you could raise some money is the short answer, but we'd have to sit down with a whiteboard, I think, to go through this, to really understand what you're thinking. I think for me to give you an actual legitimate answer.
Yeah, I guess I was interested in what you said earlier, which was that deal flow obviously is the important thing here, and that you're right. There's a lot of money around. If you've actually got targets there that you've gone through this 10-to-1 process, and actually now look, all we now need is 20 million or 100 million or whatever it is. There's plenty of people that have got the money to put in on that.
Oh, sure.
Assuming these are good businesses. So actually, the challenge here is to get to that position. Not necessarily, once you're there, you'll get the money.
Sure.
So it's whether you can essentially accelerate that you can persuade people to accelerate that process by investment.
Correct. And so the one, the other thing that we think that is sort of elegantly simple about what we're doing and quite effective is that we're not going out to raise money for this, because when you go to raise capital, that's another disruptive process. I've got 2 capital market guys on my team that all they do is focus on raising capital, but that is another exercise that takes a lot of time to be able to go and raise money. We're eliminating the need to do that. So because we're eliminating the integration, because we're eliminating the need to raise capital, we're focused just on velocity of building revenue and profitability really fast. And that becomes a fun story to tell people at a bar after the smoke clears, that, we went from, 0 to 10 million in 10 months.
Thank you very much.
Without capital. How the hell did you do that?
Brilliant answer. We'll keep you on this video chat for the next 2 hours. No threat, so. So thank you very much for coming in today, Perry, and giving us your really great insight into what it is that you do. How can everybody find you once this is over? Where is your website, your email address? What's the best way of getting hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So one last thing I'll say before I do that is, we're also quite interested if there's a digital agency that wants to either sell down a minority stake of their business, or if they want to sell out completely. Like, we are actually quite intrigued to have a conversation around that. It's a really interesting time in kind of the UK sort of tax system, is that in the coming weeks, they're going to be changing a lot of the tax laws. So if you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to kind of sort of sell down now, it's probably advantageous for you to take some chips off the table and to be able to take that out using kind of the entrepreneur's relief or some effective tax ways to do that. Because in a few weeks, the government is going to be changing that, and they're going to be doing away with a lot of that. So if you were to sell down and de-risk or sell out down the road, you're going to be hit with a much larger tax bill. So I just throw this out there. If somebody was looking to take a few chips off the table and maybe sell down a little piece of their business or whatever, we'd be interested in potentially having a conversation. But I just leave that for you guys to ponder. But how do you get in touch? So Davide's a colleague of mine who's here on the line. You can reach him at maybe Andy, do you want to
I can share your details? Yeah,
share my details might be easier. But if you send a message to info@perryanderson.global, that will come our way, and we're happy to get back in touch. Yeah, so info@perryanderson.global, and love to.
And I'll put that up in the LinkedIn and the Facebook group
great.
as well, so everybody can click on it rather than type it incorrectly. All right, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time today, Perry. I think everybody appreciates that. It's a few smiles on people's faces.
My pleasure.
Either perplexed or happy with the fantasies that are going on now. Okay, brilliant.
I hope the latter.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll see everybody next week. Video will be available again, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also on the Capital A website as well, which I'll distribute links to afterwards. I'm sure everybody appreciates Perry's time today. Little round of applause. Nice one.
Thanks, Perry. Thanks, Andy.
Yes, no problem, Will.
Good one.
Pleasure, everybody.
Okay.
Thanks for your time.
I'll catch you guys, another video Tuesday, and also next week we have a guy called Richard Waddington, who sold quite a large agency himself and is also an investor into agencies. So he'll be on the chat next week, Richard Waddington. I'll send out some details as well via emails. All right, thank you very much for your time, guys. Good to see you all again. Hope that was informative.
And thanks.
No worries.
Thanks, Perry. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.